One.
Hello again, welcome back. I'm so glad to see you all. Today we're going to finish up Lucy on the Loose, another Eileen Cooper Lucy adventure book. If you remember right, the last time we were together, Bobby and his friend Sean were running all over town looking for Lucy and not having any success finding her at all. But when they went into the butcher shop, they met a woman. And oddly enough, she had lost a pet as well. And remember what it was? A big orange, oh, that's not right at all, is it? A big ginger-colored cat had been missing from her house for a few days. I think there might be a little connection going on here. But let's read together and find out. Put my glasses on. Ginger, the lady cried. You've seen my Ginger, my very special Ginger? When did you see her? Where was she? Can you take me to where she is, the lady said. Well, I'm pretty sure it's your cat. It matches this description pretty well, Bobby said. The lady forgot all about buying anything at the butcher store. She hustled right out the door. Off she ran, with Bobby and Sean running behind her. Oh, whoa, we have to find my Ginger. We just have to find my sweet Ginger, she told them. It's been 3 whole days since she left home. I'm so worried about her. Candy was still licking her ice cream cone. She was very confused. Who's Ginger? She whispered to Bobby. And who's that woman? The woman heard her. She pulled herself up to her full height. I am Mrs. Agatha Adams, she said. She pointed at Bobby. And his dog, his terrible, terrible dog, is chasing my sweet cat, Ginger. Candy turned to Bobby. I just saw a friend from camp. I told her about Lucy running away. My friend said she saw a beagle chasing a cat near the fire station. Wow, Sean said. Let's go. Bobby jogged toward the fire station. Sean was right behind him, holding the bag of bones for Lucy. His shoelaces were flapping, but he didn't stop to tie them. Mrs. Agatha Adams was huffing and puffing behind Sean. She clutched her tiny little hat. Butch pranced next to Mrs. Adams. Candy brought up the rear. Butch's leash was in one hand, and her chocolate ice cream cone was in the other. Bobby looked over his shoulder. Somebody watching might think they were a crazy parade. Another time it would have been funny, but not today. It was only a short block to the firehouse. The firehouse door was open. A big red fire truck was inside. A fireman was sitting outside reading a magazine. Excuse me, sir, Mrs. Adams said with a gasp. Have you seen a beautiful cat? A big, beautiful ginger-colored cat with a big, fluffy tail being chased by a dog? The fireman put down his magazine. As a matter of fact, I have, he said. When? How long ago? Which way were they headed? Candy asked. Slow down, the fireman said. It was maybe 10 minutes ago. Those two went flying by. Oh, did my cat look harmed? Was my cat okay? Was the dog being mean to my beautiful cat? Mrs. Agatha Adams demanded. Your cat looked fine to me, the firefighter replied. She was leading that little dog on a merry chase. I believe the dog was chasing my cat, Mrs. Adams said stiffly. The fireman grinned. Well, maybe, but the cat looked like the one to be in charge. If my poor Ginger gets scared and runs up a tree, said Mrs. Adams. "I hope you'll bring a ladder and get her down." "Okay, but I don't think Ginger was all that scared," the fireman said. "But please, sir," Bobby asked, trying to sound bold, "where were they going?" The fireman pointed. They were running toward the baseball field. Bobby thanked the fireman. "Let's go," he said, and the parade was off again. Bobby was running as fast as he could. Mrs. Agatha Adams was running as fast as she could, too, but it wasn't very fast. There was a small picnic area next to the ball field. A mom, a dad, and a set of twins about 3 years old were eating lunch at one of the picnic tables. "Did you see a dog chasing a cat?" Bobby asked. Now he wasn't so afraid to speak up. He was close to finding Lucy. "Doggy, doggy," the little boy yelled. "Kitty, kitty," the little girl yelled back. "Shh, quiet now," the father said. Mrs. Agatha Adams looked like she was ready to burst. "Well, did you see them or not?" she demanded. The mother nodded. "A little while ago I saw them. That orange cat almost knocked me right over, and that cute little white and brown dog was running after her." "Lucy," Bobby said. "Ginger," Mrs. Adams said, and together they asked, "Which way did they go?" "They went toward the baseball diamond," the woman answered. And the parade was on the move again. Butch was pulling so hard on his leash. Candy had to dump her ice cream cone. She needed both hands to control Butch. Sean had tied his shoelaces at the fire station, and he was running right next to Bobby. Mrs. Adams had a burst of energy. She was keeping up with the boys. "There it is! There it is!" shouted Bobby. The baseball field was in sight. It looked like a Little League game was going on. There were parents in the stands. One team was on the field, and the other team had a player up at bat. Bobby pulled ahead of the rest of the parade. He ran over to the baseball field, and he looked all around. "Oh, no, there's no Lucy," he muttered. Mrs. Agatha Adams came hurrying up. Her hair was the color of an orange. Her face was the color of a tomato. "Do you see them? Do you see them? Are they in sight anywhere?" she demanded. Bobby shook his head, and he looked toward the batter's box. The boy at bat took a swing at the ball that was coming his way. It was a good, solid hit. The boy started running. He wasn't the only one running. A brown and white beagle with black spots dashed out from under the bleachers, and she ran onto the field too. "Look, there's Lucy," Bobby yelled. "But where's my Ginger? Where's my sweet Ginger?" Mrs. Adams yelled. All the players were yelling too. "Get that dog off the field! Get that dog off the field right now!" But Lucy knew what to do when she saw a ball go flying. Chase it and bring it back. She ran past the pitcher's mound. She ran into left field. She was following that ball. Just then, Bobby noticed a patch of orange under the stands. "Look, Mrs. Adams, it's Ginger," he said. Ginger ran out on the field. "Where's he going?" Mrs. Adams asked. Sean, Candy, and Butch joined them. Lucy was chasing Ginger. "Oh, no. Now it looks like Ginger's chasing Lucy." And sure enough, Ginger stayed right on Lucy's heels. The teams were in an uproar. The umpire was yelling, "Who do those animals belong to? Get them off the field. If that's your dog, get it off the field." Uh-oh. Bobby was going to have to claim Lucy in front of all of the baseball players and the umpire and the fans. But before Bobby could say anything, Lucy found the ball, and she picked it up. She looked all around, and then she saw Bobby. Lucy galloped over to him. She proudly dropped the ball at his feet. Then she lay down right next to the ball. She was all tuckered out. Ginger was still right behind Lucy. He took a long stretch, and then he lay down too. Oh, my poor Ginger, Mrs. Adams said. He's such a delicate kitty. I'm sure all of this has just been too much for him. The umpire hurried up to them. Are those animals yours? Mrs. Agatha Adams looked down and then looked up at the umpire. The cat's mine, she said. And that's my dog, Bobby said. Well, can you just get them out of here, the ump asked. They're lying right on the baseline. Oh, of course, sweetie, Mrs. Adams called. Come on, come, my little Ginger. Come along, it's Mama. Time to wake up. Come with Mama. Ginger slowly opened his eyes. He took one look at Mrs. Adams and squeezed them shut again. Well, what about your dog, kid? The ump asked. By now, Lucy was snoring. Bobby shook her lightly. Fun's over, girl. It's time to go home. Lucy kept right on with her soft snores. Bobby looked up. Most of the little leaguers and a few of the parents were milling around. Everyone was watching. He wished they would just all go away. He pretended he was alone with Lucy. Come on, girl, he said. Come on, it's time to go. Lucy wagged her tail, but she didn't wake up. Then Bobby had an idea. Sean, do you still have those bones? Sean handed over the bag of bones that they had gotten from Joe the butcher. Bobby waved the bag in front of Lucy's nose. Lucy gave a huge yawn, and then slowly, very slowly, she got up. That's it. You're a good dog, Bobby said. I'll give you one of these to chew on later. Lucy gave a happy bark. All the baseball players clapped. That woke up Ginger. Meow! Meow! Bobby grabbed Lucy's collar. He didn't want the chase to start again, but Lucy didn't seem interested in running anymore, and Ginger didn't seem very interested either. He started licking his paws. Butch, on the other hand, was tugging on his leash. He wanted to see his pal Lucy, and he was curious about that big orange-colored ball of fluff with a tail. I'm going to get Butch out of here, Candy said. Lucy and Ginger might be tired, but Butch isn't. Candy pulled Butch away. Come on, Butch. Maybe there will be some bones at home. Or, if there aren't, I could give you some of those cookies that look like bones. Or if we're out of those. And off she went. Okie dokie now, the show's over, the umpire said. Everybody back to their positions. Bobby felt so happy. Without even thinking, he said, Thanks, everybody. The players said things like, No problem, and So long, doggy. Mrs. Adams picked up Ginger. He was a big load, but she didn't seem to mind. Ginger was so tired he didn't even wiggle. Lucy rubbed against Bobby's leg. I think Lucy wants to go home, Bobby told Sean. I should think so, a familiar voice said. I think it's time you came home, too. Bobby didn't even have to turn around to see who was speaking. It was his mother. Uh-oh, said Bobby under his breath. His mother looked mad. Usually, Bobby could see his mother's dimples, even when she wasn't smiling, but there were no dimples to see now. Bobby, what's going on here? Mrs. Quinn asked. Lucy ran away, Bobby started to explain. I know that much, his mother said. I went to Sean's house to find you, and Ben told me that Lucy was gone. He gave me her leash. Mrs. Quinn pulled the leash out of her pocket and clipped it to Lucy's collar. She was lost, Bobby said quietly. Why didn't you come to get me? Mrs. Quinn asked. Bobby hung his head. I wasn't watching Lucy the way I should, and I was afraid that you would be angry." "Bobby was really, really worried about Lucy," Sean told Mrs. Quinn. "Well, I was really worried about Bobby, and you too, Sean," Mrs. Quinn said. "I didn't know where you went. I've been driving all over town looking for the two of you." "Well, I thought we'd find Lucy a lot sooner," Bobby said. "I didn't think that she would be gone so long." "That's no excuse, Bobby, and you know it." But Mrs. Quinn reached over and gave Bobby a hug. She hugged Sean too, and then she hugged Lucy. Mrs. Adams put Ginger down. As soon as he was on the ground, he stretched out. It was time for another cat nap. "I am Mrs. Agatha Adams." Mrs. Adams introduced herself to Bobby's mother. "And this is Ginger," she said, pointing to the sleeping cat. "The cat that was in our yard," Mrs. Quinn said. "Lucy was chasing her," Bobby explained, "and they took off together." Lucy flopped down next to Ginger. Everybody was busy talking, and she was still tired from her adventure. "Your son was quite bold today," Mrs. Adams told Bobby's mother. Bobby looked at Mrs. Adams. "Him? Bold? Really?" Mrs. Quinn said faintly. "Oh, yes," Mrs. Adams continued. "He went from place to place asking about Lucy. He would not rest until he knew Lucy was safe." Mrs. Adams turned to Bobby. "And because you kept looking, I found my sweet Ginger, too." Mrs. Quinn looked at Bobby with surprise. "Well, my goodness, you've had a very busy day." Bobby was still a little bit surprised himself. Lucy gave a small yip. "Yes, so you did," Mrs. Quinn said to Lucy. Mrs. Quinn said she would give Mrs. Adams and Ginger a ride home, and Sean, of course, could come along too. That evening, Bobby had to tell his father what had happened. Mrs. Quinn was making dinner. Lucy was asleep again, this time curled up on her blanket in the family room. Her favorite chewed-up slipper was under one paw. Mr. Quinn was sitting on the couch ready to listen. Bobby told him the whole story. He even told his father that he had snuck back to their house to look for Lucy. Bobby knew that's when he should have told his mother that Lucy was gone. After he had confessed everything, Bobby felt better. He felt almost as good as when he saw Lucy chasing the ball out to left field. But he had one more thing to say. "I'm really sorry, Dad." "I know you are, Bobby," Mr. Quinn said. "But you see what can happen when you aren't paying attention." Bobby nodded. "Lucy was very lucky today," Mr. Quinn continued. "She could have gotten lost or hurt, or even worse." Bobby didn't want to think about Lucy not being lucky today. It was just too horrible to think about. "And what about you?" asked his father. "Something bad might have happened to you. You know better than to go somewhere, anywhere, without asking your mother or me." Bobby hung his head. "I know," he said. "I shouldn't have been running around town any more than Lucy, even with the whole parade of people." Bobby looked up at his father. "I'll never do anything like that again, I promise, Dad." Lucy was awake. She heard her name. She got up and she trotted over to Bobby. Bobby picked up Lucy and put her on his lap. It felt so good to have her there. It was the best feeling in the world. "I was going to punish you, Bobby," Mr. Quinn said, "but now that you've told me the whole story, I guess I won't." Bobby was surprised. "You won't? Why not?" "You were already punished. You had to worry about Lucy on the loose." Bobby was having a party. It was a party for all of his friends. It was one of the last days before school started. Mrs. Quinn had set up the picnic table in the backyard, and Mr. Quinn was grilling hamburgers and hot dogs. Mr. Davis was sitting in a lawn chair talking to Candy. They were looking at Bobby and Sean's drawings. There were new pictures of the Lone Ranger in Silver. Silver looked like a horse now, instead of a cow. Bobby and Sean were throwing a ball back and forth. "Me too, me too," Ben yelled. The boys took turns throwing the ball to Ben too. Lucy and Butch were playing their own game. They were both pulling on an old stuffed bear. They growled at each other, but it was only pretend growling. "When are we going to eat?" Candy asked Mrs. Quinn. "As soon as our special guests arrive." Candy sat up straight. "Special guests? Who are they? Did you hire a clown? I love clowns. We had a clown at my birthday party when I was 7 and Mrs. Quinn laughed. "No, Candy. No clowns today." Bobby stopped tossing the ball. "The guests are Mrs. Agatha Adams and Ginger." Candy looked surprised. "Ginger? Ginger was the one who started all the trouble. Why would you invite them?" "It wasn't really Ginger's fault," Mrs. Quinn said. "Mrs. Adams and Ginger just moved to the neighborhood. Ginger got out of the house and he didn't know how to get home." Mr. Davis spoke up. "But what if Ginger and Lucy start chasing each other again?" "Mrs. Adams was worried about that too," Bobby's mother said. "But she told me she thinks she solved that problem. She just didn't tell me how." Bobby flopped down on the grass, and Sean flopped down next to him. "They can't go too far," Sean said. "Not with your yard all fenced in. I wish I'd come over here the day Lucy got loose." "Oh, I don't like to think about that day," Bobby said quietly. "I know," Sean said, "but Bobby, we did something good that day. You hate to talk to people, don't you know?" "Me too, but we talked to plenty of people that day." Bobby had to smile. There sure were lots of people. The kid in the park, and the cashier in the store, and the people in line too, Sean added. "We talked to them too. And Joe the butcher," Bobby continued. "And Mrs. Agatha Adams," Sean said. "Well, mostly she talked to us," Bobby pointed out, and the boys both grinned. "And we talked to that fireman too," Bobby remembered. "That was pretty brave," Sean said. "Absolutely," Bobby agreed. "And the family at the picnic table, remember them?" Sean asked. "And we talked in front of 2 baseball teams," Bobby said. "And don't forget the ump." Sean nodded. "We did it for Lucy," Bobby said. "We weren't shy at all when it came to finding Lucy." Bobby looked over at Lucy. She was still playing happily with Butch. "I have Lucy to thank for a lot of things," Bobby said. "I'm not so shy anymore. I have friends." Bobby smiled at Sean, and he punched him in the arm. "Like you." Sean grinned right back. "Like me," he said. A noisy car pulled into the Quinn's driveway. Mrs. Agatha Adams got out of the car. Her orange hair was piled on top of her head. She wore a dress covered in big gold stars, and she wore a long, star-shaped earrings. "Hello," she said. "I'm sorry I'm late." Mrs. Quinn waved. "Didn't you bring Ginger?" she asked. "Oh, yes, I did." Mrs. Adams went into the back seat. She lifted Ginger out and put him on the ground. Ginger was wearing something new. Around his neck was a collar. The collar was made of shiny stones that looked like diamonds. Attached to the collar was a gold leash. Ginger didn't seem to mind being on a leash. He glided along like a small tiger, looking very proud of himself. Mrs. Adams looked proud of Ginger, too. She walked him into the yard. Butch saw Ginger and barked. Ginger just ignored him. Lucy didn't bark, though. She bounded right over. I guess Lucy remembers Ginger, Bobby said to Sean. Lucy certainly did. She stood in front of Ginger and gave one long howl. Ginger had a greeting for Lucy, too. Ginger lifted his paw, and he tapped Lucy on the chest. Cats can't smile, but Ginger sure looked like she was smiling. Lucy has a new friend, Sean said. Bobby laughed. Humans, dogs, even cats. Everybody loves Lucy. The end. Well, that story had a very happy ending, and it had some important lessons in it, too. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like Lucy's stories. I don't have a dog named Lucy, but I do have a dog, and she's white and brown. She doesn't have any brown spots, but she does have a little black nose. She has very soft and kind eyes, and ears that are so soft you just couldn't believe it. And her name is Zana. Zana's a good little dog, but if she has the opportunity to run off, she'll take it. So we have to keep her on a leash or in our fenced-in backyard. One time she got away, and someone called me up on the phone and said, "Are you Zana's human?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, Zana is in my backyard playing with my dog. Can you come and get her?" So I grabbed her leash and off I went. And I had to go and get her and tell her, "You're a naughty little puppy, Zana. Something could have happened to you when you were away from home. The big world is no place for a sweet little puppy like you." So if you have pets, you know what I'm talking about. That's the end of our time together today. I'm not exactly sure what we'll be reading the next time, but I'll figure it out between now and then. In the meantime, I hope you have a most wonderful rest of the day, and I'll look forward to seeing you when we get together again. You know what we do before we say goodbye. We always do our hand washing song. So let's get ready. Wiggle those fingers and roll up those sleeves. Sing along. We're gonna wash those germs away, strong and healthy every day. We make wise choices so we stay well. We're gonna wash those germs away. We're gonna wash those germs away, strong and healthy every day. We make wise choices so we stay well. We're gonna wash those germs away. We make wise choices in every way. We're gonna wash those germs away. Woof! Well, off I go, back to my day, and I will look forward to seeing you the next time we get together here at Grammie's Book Nook. Bye now.